We have a special guest with us today. We have Colin with IGP. Everyone knows him. A little different. We're virtual. We're gonna call it Dad Life. We were supposed to be in person, but Ben had a new baby, and we scheduled this and got a text yesterday evening, something like that, saying, hey, let's push it off a week. So we'll be in person maybe next week with IGP and talk through what we were going to, which is the mental side of this. Today, for those of you that listen about the parenting side, you're getting zero of that today. We are abandoning our parenting duties and we are talking strictly golf. All the new gear. We're going to talk fitting. We're going to talk new releases that everything came out. And I don't know if you've done any research as far as like gear that isn't clubs, because the PGA show is everything. It's clubs, rangefinders, random training aids. So maybe we can talk a little bit about all that random stuff too. But before we get into that, let's talk about what we were just talking about, the fitting process, kind of before we started hitting record here. Colin, your new role with IGP is mainly I'm gonna call you the master fitter there, right? I know that's technically a certification and everything, but you're kind of the fitter guy at IGP. Everyone that gets fit runs through you. So you are uniquely qualified to have this conversation. Please tell Jason when the proper time to get fit is.
Hey, all right, I'll let you finish and then I have a rebuttal.
I would start with just the importance of getting fit in the first place. Jason, not throwing any shade, but I think that has a lot of credibility. And now in terms of like, when does it make sense to get new clubs? I think it's the first part of that conversation, because this is operating under the assumption that you should get fit, right? Which from our perspective is, if you look at it like a suit, right? How often would you go buy a new suit off the rack? Not get it tailored, not get it adjusted. The likelihood that it's going to fit you as well as something that's made specifically for you or tailored to your particular body type or size or arm length or whatever it might be, it's just not going to fit as well. So, it's basically a similar idea. One of the things you mentioned earlier too, in terms of zero dad life or parenthood, right? I think we can segue that in here in a pretty simple way. If you don't have a lot of time to practice, right, and if you have a fairly repeatable pattern, but you're playing clubs that are 15 or 20 years old, why would you not take advantage of, something that's more forgiving, something that's designed to launch higher, to create faster ball speeds in an effort to like make the game more enjoyable, right? The game's already hard enough as it is. So if you're not in a position of life where, you got 3 kids running around, full-time job, wife to take care of, things like that, then you should explore the validity of just using equipment to help you improve your game. It's not uncommon for us to see folks improve 3, 5, 7+ strokes, even though they're not practicing or making adjustments to their swing. I had one guy that I fit for a full bag last summer, and he sent me a message at the end of last year. He wanted to add a 5-iron to his bag, which initially I was averse to. And we'll kind of dig into like the set makeup and gapping conversation, things like that on the back half of this. But he wanted to order a 5-iron. He already understood that like that wasn't something that I recommended for him. But at the same time, if he wants a 5-iron, he's either going to get it from me or he's going to go like find it on his own. So he understands the implications. But with that said, he shaved 5 or 6 strokes off his scoring average just with equipment that was more suitable for him.
And when you say more suitable, are you saying more suitable? Because there's a lot to that. Shafts, head, more forgiving, more. Is it lie angle? Is it because there are quick fixes that a lot of people can make, even just going to you. I'm always going to advocate going to you to get your clubs bent, loft, and lie. Do a gapping session, right? So when you say more suitable, was it more suitable with Band-Aid fixes like bending, loft, and lie, or is it more suitable with some quick adjustments on actual club differences?
So when I say more suitable, I mean better performing, right? And to your point, that can take a different flavor depending on, how much the individual wants to invest in their bag, how often they play. Sometimes it's as simple as, length or loft or lie angle adjustments. I've had coaching assessments where, we flatten all the clubs by 2 degrees and everything gets like a lot better. Right now, generally with those types of folks too, and this kind of loops back to the initial question that you asked, like when does it make sense to get fit? Um, and we kind of talked about this the last time that we did an in-person pod. Like, there's scenarios where somebody might come in for a fitting and we're, 20, 30 minutes into the fitting and it doesn't matter what club I put in their hand. It doesn't matter what shaft. It just doesn't matter, right? It's going to do the same thing every time, right? Just from an inconsistency standpoint. Now, even within those scenarios, sometimes you find a combination and all of a sudden everything just gets remarkably better. That's always fun to see. But, to the extent that there's some repeatability in the pattern, I would say is when it makes sense to get fit. When your equipment is not rewarding you for making what is functionally a good swing otherwise, that's when it makes sense to get fit. The interesting thing with fitting too is it's not always black and white. There's things that should make sense on paper. You put it in the player's hands and everything gets worse. And you're like, okay, why did that happen? So, the most simple answer I would say is that last part is like, if you're not getting rewarded for making good swings, right? If the equipment is inhibiting you from getting better, then scoring better, right? Performing better, then that's when it makes sense to get fit. Right. And now in terms of like what criteria is responsible for that, TrackMan data gives us a lot of good information on that. The flip side of that, how are players making swing adjustments or mechanical adjustments that are basically maladapting to equipment that's not suitable for them, right? Like, whether the fitting is adjusting a line angle or a different shaft. I have another student that I work with from the coaching standpoint. He's just picking the game back up after, I don't know, 15, 20-year hiatus. He's a dentist, and, as a dentist, you're very like hunched over, right? You have a lot of rounding of the shoulders, and you're in that position for hours every day, right? So he's got some limitations from like a thoracic mobility perspective. And a big thing, as you get a little bit older is like we're always chasing like speed and distance. So he comes in for the first time and he's got these old Titleist clubs that are functionally like blades. They have 140-gram steel shafts in them. I had to look it up because I didn't know how much they weighed. They're 140-gram steel shafts. And he's swinging 7-iron at like 65, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, look, there's a couple things here, right? First of all, you should do just some basic stretching on a daily basis, not just for your golf game, but it's good for your spine. Just stuff like bars behind the head, extend your spine. You don't have to do a lot to make yourself move better. Beyond that, let's get you some equipment that doesn't, feel like an anvil when you're trying to swing it. So we found some 70-gram shafts for him, put him in some Strixons, and he's at the point now where I saw him a couple of weeks ago, and when we fit him for those, he was moving his 7-iron at like 68, 69 miles an hour. When we fit him to those, he was moving it at maybe 73, 74. So it was already a little bit faster. And then he comes in and he's swinging his 9-iron the other day at like 75. Right. So in that scenario, it kind of enabled him to like move a little bit better and pick up a little bit of club head speed and subsequently ball speed and distance, and got more launch and more spin. And where he's hitting his 7-iron, 105 yards before, it's now flying. I saw him hit 155 the other day.
There you go.
Right, so it's just kind of understanding, like, is the pattern repeatable enough for me to collect data to discern whether or not the equipment is providing a like performance benefit. So kind of a long-winded answer to get there, but it's just like, if it's not helping you play better golf, if it's getting in your way, something that just takes time and experience to understand, okay, are they swinging this way because of the equipment? Right? Whether it's too heavy, it's too soft, it's too stiff. Like what are the factors at play here that we should be considering? Is this more Indian or is this more arrow? Right. And the short answer, because I have people like make comments like that all the time in fittings, it's just like, I don't think I'm ready to get fit, or like my swing's not good enough, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is coming from like 12 handicappers, right? That like enough consistency in the ball striking and the speeds where like it's at play here. This isn't always the case, but I would say for most golfers, it's both Indian and arrow, just to a different extent for each. Some people it's more Indian, Some people it's more arrow. Some people it's Indian doing stuff because the arrow sucks.
So when you say that, then what I hear is kind of the better you get, obviously, the more that percentage goes to less Indian, more arrow, because you are extremely repeatable and consistent in your swing. So would you say that the better you are, the more likely you are to maybe do intermittent fittings or even gapping sessions? Because technology does change. So for a 1 handicap or a scratch golfer versus a 10, is a scratch going to get fit more often because it might be the arrow more often?
Well, ideally, if you nail the fitting and you do it correctly, you shouldn't have to get fit that often in general, whether you're a 12 handicap or a 2.
Well, I guess I'm more talking about woods and your top end because your technology changes, right? Like is a 12 handicapper going to feel the leaps in technology that a 1 or a scratch is in the biannual release of these technologies?
Arguably more.
Okay.
The 12 handicap, right? Because there's a reason you still see some of these guys on tour playing driver models from 2 or 3 years back, or sometimes even further, right? Henrik Stenson was playing the same 3-wood for 15 years.
I think Brooks Koepka still plays the same
He plays
driving
the
iron, that Nike Vapor.
Yep.
Yeah, that 2
Same
iron.
idea.
Or
Right.
4
So
to 4
again,
iron,
like,
1, 2.
this would go back to the old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. If it's working and it's performing for you, then it's a non-issue. Right. Whether there's better technology out there or not. Now, if there's something that performs better, yeah, you should explore that as an option. But this goes back to kind of the first thing I said about like being a parent and maybe not having as much time to practice. Like you might move the needle more as a 12 handicap that has better equipment as opposed to the alternative where, look, if you're 12 and you're playing blades from like 15 years ago and you struggle with consistency and distance in terms of how far you fly it, yeah, you probably need something more game improvement, right? And it's not that far fetched to think that they would pick up 3, 6, 10 strokes for that.
So as you're working your way through then, because there's clubs that do need to get, and maybe that's again part of the gapping conversation, but like wedges. We all know that fresh wedges helps on average, and this is a wide question because you deal with so many different calibers. On average, what is the amateur looking on replacement of wedges for
Good
life
question.
cycle?
Yeah, I would say it depends on frequency of play. Like as a general rule of thumb, if you're playing, 3 to 4 times a month, so roughly once a week on average, you should probably replace your wedges like every 12 to 15 months, 12 to 18 maybe.
So what
That's a good
should,
rule of thumb.
if you're hitting on a TrackMan, what level of spin should someone say I need to start on a full swing? Like I have a 52 full swing. If that spin drops below, what should I consider?
Depends.
For me, you know my swing and my
Okay,
spin.
so that's what we're
So
getting
for
at.
me
We're asking for Alex advice here, not general public advice.
Yeah, he wants to know because he needs to get some new wedges and he needs to figure out where he needs to fall on this.
I'm still spinning them though. Like I went to IGP yesterday. I was practicing, and I always like to finish my practice. I go pick one hole and I'll hit 20 wedges to it. I go to the cradle, whatever, at 100 yards. I'm still spinning them back. I'm still getting 95 to 10,000 with my 52. So it's like, yeah, part of me says I need new wedges, but also if I'm getting the spin, like why?
Counterpoint, and this is something that we kind of account for when we do fittings inside. What happens when you have less friction in outdoor environments? What does that spin number look like?
It drops.
Well, yeah, certainly, right? Now, if the ball's not stopping as quick as you want it to, that's a pretty easy indicator, right? But there's also a lot of other variables at play. I mean, look, you get grass, you get moisture, you get dirt, anything between the ball and the grooves, it's generally going to reduce friction, right? In certain scenarios, sometimes like sand or a little bit something in between can actually increase friction. It just kind of depends on your lie and things like that. But yeah, if the ball's stopping quick enough when you're outside, it's probably okay. But you're also going to adapt to that over time. Like I'm in a scenario now where I need to just dump my 60, but I just feel so comfortable with it. I mean, it's beat. Like those grooves need some loving. I have a backup that I've just been sitting on for like 3 or 4 months, and I just haven't put it in play, despite knowing that it's probably not performing as well as it should, just because I have a level of comfort with the other one. Which that said, I'm probably going to put the new one in play this week now that I'm verbalizing that out loud. But um, yeah, I mean, it's nice in a perfect environment. Next time you're in IGP hitting wedges, like what you might do, and give you a little spray bottle, and spray with some water. And just give it a
Yeah.
spritz and see what the spin numbers look like at that point. Because if it's dropping by 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 plus, which I would expect it to, then yeah, it's probably time to replace.
Yeah, I think that's a good experiment to have because I think it's just so hard. We play on municipal courses. We're not members at a country club here. None of the greens are the same. So unless you're playing the same green over and over, you really don't get that perspective of, is my ball stopping? Because the greens are crap sometimes. I could hit a great spin wedge, but the greens are so firm or beat up that it's not going to spin regardless. Whereas like I used to be a member at the club here and they were bent grass greens and you could throw darts there and it would spin and hold. But now that everything's Bermuda everywhere we go, so it's truly hard to indicate if it's the wedge or if it's the green when you're playing, unless you're playing the same course, same greens over and over and over to where you have a baseline. That's why my baseline is TrackMan. And if I'm getting 9,000
Yeah.
plus spin on a 52 degree, okay, I think that's plenty of spin.
Potentially, yeah. Counterpoint, you've also seen me spin wedges off firm greens and things like that too. Like it's trade-offs.
Yeah.
Right.
There certainly are.
Kind of like I was getting at earlier, you might end up adapting, right? If it's not spinning the way it could be subconscious, right? You might start trying to hit more down on it or hit more across it to try to generate more spin, because over time, maybe it's like, starting to roll out a foot or two more than you would typically expect, maybe a month or two at a time, right? So it's not something you might necessarily be conscious or observant to. And potentially, like I was saying earlier, maladapt to something that's just not doing what it should be doing.
Yeah, no, I certainly understand that. I think that's everything, because you can maladapt to your standard driver flight and say, oh, I don't need a new driver because I know what to expect out of this one. And, you might be able to hit it a little bit straighter and a little bit farther, but why am I going to deal with that when I know I can keep this one in play? I know plenty of guys that have terrible swings, but of repeatable ball flight. They're good players and they just don't change their clubs because of that exact reason.
Yeah. So I said for that, when it stops performing, and sometimes you don't even know, right? To your point, you just get accustomed to what that club does. So you have an expectation. But if you can find something that gives you the same level of repeatability, but you can hit it 20 yards further, like why would you not do that?
So this goes back to what we kind of started the conversation with putters. Is that why it's so easy to move to a different putter? Because I think you notice your putter not performing a lot faster than other clubs. So you're quick to be like, oh no, I'm gonna make a change here.
Yeah, I think some of that's probably mental. Putter's the club that you use the most too. It's not like, I don't know. I think some of that too, based on what we were talking about earlier, some of it's a hobby. Some people just like to collect, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. From a mental standpoint, right? I think a lot of people don't want to admit that they just kind of suck at putting, or they've, maladapted their stroke to the putter. And, if you have an off day, the adaptations and tendencies are going to be a little bit more excessive or egregious. And you do that a couple rounds in a row and you're like, nope, I don't want to use this anymore. I don't even want to look at it. It happens. I don't think it's wise, but from a mental standpoint, you just look at something different.
You went and bought a
No.
HS1 2 weeks later after it came out, after you already had a center shaft at Oz.
Yeah, but
oh wait, there was a trade-off. It only cost me $100 more, but I also got a 5-wood and a
the difference is I kept the same putter, different shafting for what I feel. You have switched complete putters at least 3 times since we've started this podcast. I have at least played the Oz center shafted or heel shafted the entire time, but the mallet is the same.
I've had the Scotty the whole time.
You went from your broomstick.
That was that was a year ago. That was before we started all this. So I've had the Scotty over a year and a half, and then I'm just messing. I just picked up this XO for fun, and because I'm trying the new grip, and I really like it, and I think the look fits my eye better.
It's a head case.
Like I said, some of it's mental sometimes.
It certainly is. So on average, then I get you say it's all data driven. So you have all this data, so we can extrapolate then. On average, when is that time to get fit then for someone comes in and, gets a lesson plan with you? Is it one of the first steps y'all look at, or do you do a couple lessons to try to normalize their swing and then fit? Because it certainly isn't the last step, and it's certainly not the first step. So on average, where does that fit come in to someone's journey?
Yes.
Simple to the point. I like it.
All the above. It just depends. Like what's that player's goals? How often are they playing? Like what's their intention with golf? Are they trying to, pick up the game so that they can play with their friends or do corporate outings and things like that? Are they, a 12 trying to get down to a 5 that's playing twice a week and practicing twice a week? Are they somewhere in between, right? Are you like a 10 or a 15 or a 20 that enjoys the game and wants to get better, but know that you don't have like the time to dedicate to like practicing? I mean, this is all part of like what we kind of like try to tap into when we go through like Q&As on the initial side of the assessment, is talking through all of this, right? It's just having a conversation about like, okay, let's be realistic here. Right? We ask them like, how often do you like currently play or practice on a weekly or monthly basis? And what's your expectation for yourself in doing those things over the next, 3, 6, 12 months? I really try to like encourage people to be honest and realistic with themselves in that question, because like the last thing I want to hear is like, I'm going to play twice a week. I'm going to practice 2 to 3 times a week, like nose to the grindstone. I'm going to do it. And, we're 3-4 weeks into this and they're like, oh, I've gotten like 1 practice session and I've played 2 rounds. It's like, okay. Like, I mean, it's going to change like how we navigate it. And it's okay. Like if you tell me I'm not going to practice, that's cool. I would rather you tell me that than like, create some perception of otherwise, whether that's for yourself or you think it's what I want to hear.
Yeah, it changes how much you're dumping on them too. Because if you have someone that is practicing or committing to practice quite a bit, you can probably throw 3 or 4 different things at them. Whereas if you have someone that's not going to practice, you're like, well, maybe let's just work on a grip change today.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And I think, some of it's just personality. Like even if they tell me that they're going to practice, every day or 3-4 times a week, but the way that they receive and interpret and apply information, like is different than somebody else, like wherein they can't think about more than like 2 things at a time. It's like, cool, let's just like focus on these 2 things, right? I'll give you some more like understanding in detail of like how this progression might work, so you understand what we're trying to do. I'll paint the picture, but that's part of that Q&A process, just understanding how people interpret words and information. Are they visual learners? Are they more kinesthetic learners? Like I'm read write, like I need to like understand the why, and then I need to like write it down or read about it. It's easier for me to internalize it that way. Right now, obviously with something like golf, there's an inherently kinesthetic element because you're moving your body, right? So that seems kind of obvious and apparent, but with that said, people just interpret and apply information differently. So to your original question, like how do we know when to look at that? Similar to what I was getting at earlier, when is it inhibiting you from scoring better and playing better golf? When is it inhibiting you from playing better? Sometimes that's immediately on the front end, right? Sometimes we need to like, the swing is so, let's just say volatile, to where like, hey, like we need to tidy these pieces up first and then we'll, revisit this. Sometimes we can even sprinkle fitting into the lessons. Right, we can go through a lesson and we'll hit some 7 irons on the last like 10 or 15 minutes and see if there's any discernible benefit with the understanding that like this is the pattern, this is the mechanics that we're trying to like work towards and achieve.
Yeah, kind of an intro to fitting.
Yeah, I call it like fitting light. Right? It's just like sprinkle a little in. And then if like there's enough in the data where it's just like, yeah, that was like discernibly better. Like we need to like, let's do 1 or 2 more coaching. Let's like firm everything up here and let's do fitting. Right. Cause we see that it's different. The numbers aren't going to like lie to you. Like it's important to be able to interpret those, accurately and tangibly. But I mean, like I had one guy come in for an iron fitting. And this, I told you guys this story when we were talking. I think it was probably the first time that we did one in person. And we're like 30 minutes into this fitting, and it's just like every trajectory you can imagine. You got low, high, left, right, middle, just heel strikes, toe strikes, hit the ground first, occasional good one. And it's where you just have to like level with them. And be like, hey, like, look, here's where we're at. We've tested these. Right. In this player's scenario, they didn't even have clubs. So it's like you need something, right, to be able to like learn the game and go practice with. Let's shift this into more of a coaching session, right? This is like a recommendation that I would make for the clubs that you need for right now, right? It gives you enough benefit for the short term to actually have something to practice with. It's forgiving enough. It's roughly the appropriate weight. And then we can revisit this after we do some coaching, right? And if you're just honest with people, usually they're pretty
Receptive.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like they know that you have their best interests in mind, which at the end of the day is like I want to help you play better golf. Like that's why I like my job. That's what I want to do. I get to help people play better golf, like living vicariously through other people's golf game.
Well, I think one thing we can agree does help golf game and make you better is a gapping session, which is something we talked about earlier. So what I want you to talk through the gapping session, what exactly that is, but then while you're answering that, trends that you're seeing coming out of that gapping session, meaning, 7 woods are becoming a lot more prevalent, even 9 woods. 4-iron is a hot debate in the amateur world. So as you're working through that gapping session, what are some of those big trends that you're starting to see come through the amateur levels?
Okay. I'm definitely going to address the second half of that question. I'm going to address the first half as well. A little bit like put you on the spot here, right? Because we've done a couple of gapping sessions with you, right? What was your intention, your expectation? Like, why is that important for your game based on what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, for me specifically, we've the gapping has never been to really dial in yardages. I think we've always been, my irons have been where they are. It might be figuring out a couple soft spots, but it's a full bag. At least for me, it's always been, where does the gapping tell us we can add the best value from a gear perspective? It might be adding a 4th or I guess 5th wedge, technically, since I have a pitching wedge, or the top end. When it came to my game, it's always been the top end. It's always been, how can we help support the long game? Because we've talked about how my driver is pretty wild. So the last time we did a gapping session, we ended up dialing in mini driver and 7 wood. And those have tremendously helped my game. Mini driver from the perspective of I can hit it off the deck. I can access a lot of greens from a farther distance on a par 5. But it's also kind of my safety club. A lot more spin than a driver has. And then the 7 wood, I've gotten a lot of people have said, dude, that thing is dead on for you. Like it is my safety. If the other 2 aren't working, like it might only go 250, but it is dead middle of the fairway every time. I know what to expect out of it. So when we did the gapping session, that's what we dialed in, was what are the 2 clubs that we can add on the top end that helps me drive consistency to get off the tee, because that's always been my problem.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty appropriate there. If I had to round pieces of this together, right, the intention and purpose of gapping, which I would even like qualify this under the umbrella of like a club spec too, right? Checking lofts and lies, which if you're playing golf once a week or once every other week, you should probably get that done at least once a year, if not twice a year, every 6 months, give or take, right? Because just the process, especially if you're playing clubs that are softer, the process of swinging the clubs and interacting with the ground is going to have implications on the loft of the line. Right? So that should be done on like a somewhat regular basis. Two different parts of this conversation here, right? You have gapping and then you have set makeup, right? So part of like what this was for you was just, okay, what does the gapping look like at the long end of the bag? Right. And then how do we have a set makeup, which is basically what clubs do I include in my golf deck? Right. How do we find the right mix and match of woods, hybrids, irons, mini drivers, whatever it might be, in an effort to perform better and play better golf? Right. And that's going to be different for each person. Speed is a big factor in that. Right. And I think if we look at this from like, okay, gapping first and foremost, right? When does a 4-iron make sense, or a 5-iron, or a 6-iron, so on and so forth? When there is a degradation in performance, right? You need to address what can be optimized from an equipment standpoint. As a like base rule of thumb, right? If we take like 7-iron ball speed, which for you, Alex, is probably like 80 or 90 miles an hour ball speed. Does that sound okay? Yeah, it took that 1 second to settle in there. Right,
Well,
I'll give you like
my swing speed
105, maybe 110.
My swing speed's dropped a little with the 7-iron because Ben is forcing me to operate at 60% instead of 100. But
yeah,
we're still up there.
Hey, you can.
Hey, my 8-iron swing speed has been like 85 miles an hour, which that doesn't mean a lot for anyone other than you on this podcast, because you were my coach prior to Ben, so you know how fast I was swinging it. And now
like
I'm
75 before?
85.
Some big speed gains. I'm proud of you.
I think you're getting confused with your game here.
No, it couldn't be me.
I mean, who outdrove who at the holiday party?
Was that just what about the first round? You're going to neglect the first round where I got you, and then second round, you're like, okay.
Wait. But does it count if it's out of the fairway? Because Alex sprays it everywhere.
We're doing
I'm
a long drive.
Every part.
On TrackMan, I outdrove him because he was hitting it off the bottom of the face and it was spinning like crazy. And the ones that he hit decent were not in the fairway. Again, so this is part of like the fitting conversation, and we can maybe talk about this later, right? You need sufficient distance, you need manageable dispersion, and you need your descent or your landing angle to be appropriate relative to the club that you're hitting. So if we look at this from like a gapping perspective, right, again, back to like a 7-iron. Let's say there's a player that has like 110 ball speed with their 7-iron. Smash factor would be part of this, right? Are you making efficient strikes, right? Can you do that on a relatively consistent basis? Can I help you find a shaft that's going to help you do that on a more consistent basis based on how you apply force to the handle, and more or less like look at a lot of like transition stuff. That's, probably a conversation for later on in this, but let's say 110 ball speed. If you divide it by 10, that gives you 11. That's the rough approximate for how much distance you want between each iron. All right, it's not black and white, but that gives you a pretty good ballpark. Another way to look at this, right? Ball speed, right? You need approximately 5 miles an hour differential from one iron to the next. So if they're 110 with their 7-iron, I need the 6 to be 115, right? I need the 5 to be 120. Ball speed is not the end all be all in gapping from a distance perspective, right? You also have to consider launch angle and spin rate, right? So if I have, let's say, a 6-iron that's 115 ball speed, and I'm launching at, let's say, 16 and spinning at like 4,000, 4,500. If I have the same launch and spin parameters with the 5-iron, but more ball speed, it's not going to go farther enough to justify keeping it in the, right? And this is where like I hear a lot of players like, oh, I don't ever hit my 4-iron, or like my 4-iron and 5-iron do the same thing, right? So if you don't have enough club head speed, right, or you don't have the right equipment to keep the launch and spin rates where they need to be relative to the ball speed for that club, this is where the descent angle conversation would come in, right? And this is basically your landing angle, as we call it on TrackMan. If it's coming in too shallow, you're not going to have any stopping power, right? So if you're hitting a 4-iron and you got 125 ball speed, but it's launching at 10 and spinning at like 3,000, it's functionally a driving iron at that point. And if you're only using it off the tee, that's fine, right? But if you're using this into greens and expecting it to stop relatively close to where it lands, it's probably not going to happen, Right now, if you're playing link style courses or things like that, where it makes sense to just run it up there, you can get away with that kind of thing. And this is why we try to figure out, okay, do you travel when you go play golf? Right? Or do you only play the same course over and over? Are the greens firm or are they soft? For wedges, are we playing soft bunkers or firmer bunkers? And this is where that kind of segues into the set makeup conversation, right? If your 4 iron and 5 iron are doing the same thing, then you're just carrying extra weight. It's just dead weight in your back. And that's where you see folks starting to look at, more hybrids or 7 woods, 9 woods, even, that not only justify the like ball speed criteria, but provide enough launch with spin to justify like the distance criteria as well.
Yeah, and that's the exact conversation that you and I had with my driving iron. Was it was a fine enough club for me. Granted, if you remember, I broke that shaft. The shaft that was originally in it that fit well, and the shaft that's in it now is nowhere close to what fits for me. But anyways, I could hit it well, but my descent angle was barely over 40. It was never going to hold a green. And that was the conversation you and I had about going and getting a 7 wood instead. And it's been a great decision. I still have the 2 iron because there are times that it gets windy in Texas and maybe I need the 2 iron to hit something penetrating off the tee.
That's a nice segue into like the other notes that I took as you kind of asked me that question, just so I kind of have an order of operations here. Having options in your bag can make sense for a lot of people. Right now, if you're playing like the same course pretty much day in and day out, perhaps doesn't have as much validity. But like if you're traveling to play golf, like if you're going on golf trips on an annual basis or even more than once a year, you're playing at different altitudes, warmer weather, colder weather, whatever it might be, you need to understand what the trade-offs of playing in those environments are. Right? You'll hit the ball further in Colorado up in the mountains, right? But it's not going to spin, so you need more loft. Right? So you might end up playing like a 7-wood instead of a driving iron in that type of scenario. Right? To your point, even like wind, right? Or let's say I'm going to play even just locally courses. If you play different courses that are local to you, like, I mean, I play a lot at Frisco Farms. Like there's like what, 3 holes, 4 holes, 5, maybe where you use driver.
Yeah. I mean, it's holes 1, 2, 3. And then I don't think I touched it until what, 14? Is that par 4?
16's a par 5. You'd probably use it there too. I use it on 18 also, so probably 6 holes for me. I also use it on 12, but I mean, you hit many long enough on 12, it's only like 310 from like the back tees.
Yeah. Well, and that was a good point because I had that in my list of questions to ask you as well. You're talking about a gapping session. At what point, too, do you say, okay, this is probably without a significant swing change? And if you're not willing to do that, this club is useless. For me, it's driver, right? You just said it. I hit my mini far enough. I can carry my mini 285, 290, which is plenty fine. The only thing I can't really do with it is hit those bullets that might cut through the wind when it is really windy. At what point do you look at someone like me and say, driver's probably not worth chasing? With my swing delivery, you know me. I hit down on my driver. I don't think I've ever hit up on it in all of the time you and I have worked together. So is the driver ever really going to be the right club for me? Or when do I abandon and just put a 5th wedge in my bag to make me more scoreable on the back end?
That would be stupid. Don't do that. How many other like low single digit or like plus handicaps, that don't carry a driver in their bag? How many tour pros you see not carry a driver in their bag?
Yeah, but they can actually hit their driver. I can't. That's the difference.
Well, remember that Indian and arrow conversation?
There's an Indian right there.
Well, no, and I fully said that. And when I set up that question, I said, with me, I mean, Colin we've worked together for 4 years. I get Ben's now my coach, but you're still a good friend of mine. And you watch me play. In those 4 years, have you ever seen me consistently hit up on a driver? And I haven't, because my swing is just not great with that. I try to hit up on it, and that's when I start losing it. I feel like I can control the driver when I'm hitting pretty neutral or down on it. That's why I love the mini. So at what point is that just a paperweight in my bag?
Okay, so a couple of different pieces here. You practice and you continue to work on your swing, and ideally, the changes that you're making should help yield some positive benefits for driver as well. The second piece of this, do you need to hit up on driver at 118 miles an hour?
No.
Not necessarily.
As long as you hit neutral.
Level or even one down, you can get away with two down, right? Is it going to optimize like distance? No. Is it still going to help you fly the ball further than what you would get with your mini? Yes.
Well, what I've turned that driver into is more of a tumbler where I can hit one or two down on it, and I might only carry 280, but it's going to roll out another 60, 70 yards. Whereas my mini is carrying 280, 290 and stopping within 10 yards because it's landing at such a higher descent angle.
And, it's good that you can get the mini out there to like 280, 290, maybe even 3. But you start, you go play a qualifier that you're playing a course that's 7,400 yards and you got some holes that are wind into the teeth. If you take mini off those holes, if you got a 460 yard par 4, 480 par 4, like you think like Westridge, right? What was that, hole number 8?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the uphill par 4. I mean, I've had 200 plus into that many of times.
Yeah, right. And that might even be the driver you saw the scenario because typically wind's into you on that one. We've only had a couple scenarios where wind happens to be like behind us.
But to your point, if I'm flying driver a little bit flatter on an uphill, it's going to hit and bounce versus my mini that's landing at an angle. And that thing literally stops within a yard of hitting the ground.
Yeah. And if you go back to like a strokes gain conversation, which I do think has some serious implications on fitting if you track strokes gained, to understand like how frequently am I actually hitting this club based on the courses I play, right? How well does this club actually perform for me from a performance perspective outside of just the metrics that you can collect on TrackMan and using data in that fashion, right? Shot scope, like I've looked at like the set that I had prior to what I have now. I was playing this Cobra MBCB combos, right? And then I look at what I have now with the King Tours, and I probably gained like 3 or 4 strokes on irons on approach, right? Because it's more forgetting on the mishits. But if you're 200 out on that hole versus 150 in, and both of them are in the fairway, which one do you think you're going to gain more strokes from?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And I think too, the mental side of this is I have stopped going out and worrying about score all the time. Because if I only worry about score, I don't touch my driver. You just ask the question, how often do you touch a club during a round? And there's periods there that I will not touch my driver for 5 straight rounds because I don't feel confident with it. I don't want to hit it. And my mini driver is good enough. Even my 7-wood is good enough. You take Westridge, I don't need, outside of the one hole 8, that's uphill. That's the only one that more distance because even hole 9, that's 600 plus yards uphill. It's a par 5. I get 3 shots to get there. I'm not getting there in 2 regardless of what I do. So I have stopped going and worrying about score all the time. And I will grab my driver, even if I know I'm going to lose some balls, right, and go out of bounds and this and that. Because it's practice with the driver, real practice, not range practice, not hitting bag practice. It's real practice.
Well, then this is, maybe we'd look at like different ways to solve the driver problem. Maybe between like a mini driver and an actual driver, we build you like a medium driver, right? This is what Chase does on Corn Ferry, right? So he's on staff with Ping. He has what he calls big dog and little dog, right? So he's got his normal gamer driver at his standard playing length, and then he's got a 12 degree G440 cut to like 43 and a half inches that functionally is mini driver, right? So maybe we just build you something that's like a 10 degree super forgiving, like a like Cobra Max K or G440 10K that just came out, like gives you that forgiveness, and we build it to like 44 inches, 44 and a half.
Well, if you remember, we actually took, I think, half an inch off my driver. I think I'm playing it at 45 right now. But that's a great segue into the gear that has been released over the past 3 weeks since the PGA show. You and I texted you because my buddy he's just transitioned from Titleist to Callaway staff. So he has the new Quantum, right? I can't remember who's doing what, but I've loved it. I've hit it twice. I played with him. I played with him once in a hitting bay and once on a course. And I've hit it both times, and I've absolutely loved it. But I'll say it's interesting. He had a Ventus red shaft in it, and I think it was a 9.5 or 10-degree head. So
Triple
everything
diamond?
you just said, I haven't asked him. You asked me that when I texted you, and I forgot to ask him. And I literally saw him today. The girls had soccer practice, so I should have asked him. But I don't know. I don't think so, because he's a very. You think I'm a high ball flight? He's a high ball flight. Draws the ball. He has the Ventus red. Yes, Ventus red, higher ball flight there. The club works for me. I don't know why. And you would never think that a Ventus red works for me because it's a higher launch. But you hit on, and it just shows how much you know my game. When you're talking about a kind of maybe a smaller driver type setup, maybe going to something like that is where it makes more sense for me to keep a driver in the bag, because my low launch, low spin head right now is just not doing it for it. Maybe it did it for me 2 years ago when we fit into that driver, but maybe it's not what I'm in now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't looked as recently what Ricky's playing right now, but Ricky was playing the midline Cobra. He was playing the X, the Dark Speed X, the first iteration, not the Adapt that came out last year, but he was playing the core option. He wasn't playing a low spin model. I think a lot of people like the low spin because it's like sexy, and that means, like,
I'm not going to slice it, right?
Exactly. Which, sometimes it does help with that. Right.
Well,
and like, especially like that.
So I was just going to say that was Rory, right? Rory went to a higher spin ball to control the ball more.
Spin is your friend.
People get scared of spin, and I fell into the same thing. Everything I'd always play is low launch, low spin. But yeah, you do actually need spin. I think that's why I control the 7-wood, because my 7-wood isn't the low spin, it's the X, the Dark Speed X. And my mini driver obviously has spin to it, more loft. So I think spin is important.
I think Scotty plays the core model too. It's QI10 still, but I think he still sticks with the core because it just works better for him.
Well, he also has like a 10x shaft or something in his 7-wood.
Well, true.
So, and that's part of this matchup too, right? Is like, the properties of the shaft are going to have some implication on ball flight. Like, from a shaft perspective, I want to understand like how it's drooping, right? How it's deflecting, what the EI profile of that shaft looks like in terms of relative stiffness in the butt section, the midsection, and the tip section, based on how that player applies, force, and or releases the golf club, if you want to just use some layman terms. But that's going to impact how the shaft moves in space, right? The shaft is always going to droop, so the toe is always going to work down. That happens for every golf shaft. Right? It's a function of physics. It's also going to deflect where the club head is behind the handle. It's lag deflection, and so eventually you got to kick forward into lead deflection. If you look at some of the gear stuff, right, they talk about scissoring effect, which I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but if you want to look at some YouTube videos, there's some good information out there. And these are just considerations that need to be taken into account when you're trying to find a shaft profile that's going to be most performant for a certain individual. Like, if I can help you find center face contact, right, on a consistent basis, we can start to tighten things up from a head perspective, right? Different weight options in the head, different hosel orientations. That's one of the cool things that Cobra has with their FF33 system, right? You get 33 different options. You can adjust loft and lie separately and together. Ping is really interesting with their hosel twos. Basically, you have ping on like a neutral setting. If you go into big minus or small minus, big plus, small plus, all of those are still going to functionally flatten the golf club with the way that ping is designed. Right. So if I go from neutral to like small plus, it's going to add a degree of loft. It's also going to make it 1 degree flatter. Right. Now, if I flip it around to the flat setting on ping, which is something that I like for folks that have a tendency to hit the ball too far to the left, right? If we can flatten the angle on it, it's going to help support that. If you go on the true flat neutral setting, would be 3 degrees flat. If you go flat minus or flat plus, functionally 2 degrees flat. Right. So every adjustment outside of neutral for ping is going to functionally flatten the golf. kind of interesting. Titleist is a little bit different. Titleist, you can only flatten by 3/4 of a degree, at least for fairway woods, and for driver, you get a full degree out with the hybrids. But like all this stuff, and like even the weight configurations are going to change how the shaft droops, how much the shaft torques, how much it stays in lag deflection or lead deflection, which can also have implications on face angle and directional control of the golf ball. And that's really like I think really fun part and challenging part that I enjoy as a fitter is like, hey, like which of these levers do I need to tap into? Right. I prefer, right, not to try to change the face orientation. Right. Unless it's a relatively skilled player and it's like, this thing looks like it's slam shut or address. It's like, okay, then we got to find something that you feel a little bit more confident of. When you start changing the face orientation, players are going to react to that. I want to see how much of that I can control from, shaft profile, torque, stiffness to a certain degree, weight configurations, weight location on a particular head. Like it's just, there's a lot of variables here, knowing which one to pull and by how much, and doesn't move the needle, right? Is the fun part of the problem solving for me.
Yeah, and that gets again to the mental side. When you're talking about face angle, like does it set up closed, open? Because 9 times out of 10, it's not closed or open. It just looks like it is. And I think it was Scotty. I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but they asked him a similar question, like, is there something specific you want to see out of your driver? And I think he said he doesn't like to see the driver face much. Can't remember which one it was, but that's just a preference, right? So he generally likes us to be a little more closed, because then he knows that he's not going to hit it left because he already has a fade swing.
I mean, to that end too, like if it's, at least again, everybody's perception is different. If it's more closed, it's going to seem like you see more of the face, right? Even if you have, let's just say, 2 drivers that are both like 10.5 degree loft, right? Even the like markings or cosmetics on the top line, the front edge of the driver, and even on the face itself, can change your perception on which direction that face is pointed. I forget which tour player it was, actually removed the paint fill on their ping because they saw too much of the face and it looked like it was pointing left.
So that hits on a great point. So that Quantum is the first time a Callaway club has ever set up nice to my eye. And I think a lot of it is because they do the top of the crown is almost the same material as the face. They've done that since the Paradigm. And I've always hated that because it makes it feel like the face is sitting wide open. And for someone that loses the ball right, I don't want a club that sits up wide open. So I've always struggled. That Quantum was the first one that I actually hit that I was like, oh, wow, this actually looks like it sits down properly. Contrast that with you take a TaylorMade. I can't hit a TaylorMade. I don't like it. I don't like the look of it. Don't like the setup of it. Nothing wrong with the club itself. I mean, I actually think I hit them when Ben was fitting me for 7 woods. I hit the TaylorMade 7 wood. I actually hit it really well. And the fact that it's just extremely hot. I mean, it was carrying 10 yards farther than the Cobra, which people would think is great until I don't need a 7 wood that goes 270.
Right. And I think that's, part of that criteria as well. We don't need it to necessarily go further all the time. It just depends on where your game is at. The TaylorMade like woods versus their drivers, right? Difference in face material, I think, has a lot to do with that from both performance and aesthetic standpoint, right? It just depends on what each individual needs.
Carbon face, yeah.
And then back to what you're saying about previously, like Callaway's pointed to the right for you. Sometimes players will see that and meaning like it looks like it's pointed right. So either maybe I make an adjustment at setup and I try to like hood it before I take it back. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. Or maybe I try to like close it a little bit quicker in transition to prevent it from going out to the right. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. It just depends. Right? And like that's again probably the phrase I use the most in that fitting bay. What about this? Well, it depends.
Yeah.
Right. There's always trade-offs in fitting, right? Like what are we trying to accomplish, right? What is the objective here from a performance fitting standpoint, right? That's always the basis of how I answer that question. right? Do I need a 3-wood? Probably not, right? You don't hit the ball high enough, right? You don't swing it fast enough to create ball speed for a 3-wood to make sense unless you're using it as a like pseudo mini driver or whatever it might be. And that kind of goes back to the gapping thing from earlier, right? I think a lot of people have perception of just like, oh, I've played 4-iron through pitching wedge my entire life. Like I need a 4-iron. No, the hell you don't. No. Right. And I'll frame it in like a nicer way. And, sometimes I think people are a little bit resistant to that. Because they view it as just like, oh, it means I'm getting old and I'm getting slow and and I'm a hybrid guy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, does your ego matter more than your scorecard? Because if it does, then like, what are we doing here? Like
So what do you?
Why would you make a hard game harder? Like just make it easier.
Yeah. So I asked the question, and we haven't really given a complete answer. What are some trends then that you're seeing on a high level? I get, again, it depends. Jason and I aren't going to play the same thing, but on average, you have most of your amateurs are going to fit somewhere between a 10 to 15 handicap that are coming into your shop. What are the trends that you're seeing at a high level there for types of clubs that are going in their bag?
You mean in terms of like set makeup?
Yeah, set makeup on iron, cavity back, game improvement on woods. Are you seeing more hybrids at the 4? Are you seeing a lot more 7 woods? Are you seeing more mini drivers? What are some of the high level big hitter trends that you're seeing?
If you had to guess the next 2 words that are going to come out of my mouth, what would you?
It depends.
Yeah, it depends, Alex. It does depend.
That's why I said on average.
You nailed it, bud. There is no average. There's such a wide spectrum and like skill levels and like, again, like all this stuff just has to be taken in like consideration. Like if you go and do a fitting and like your fitter is not asking you these questions, then you're not getting the value that you should be getting.
So what are call-ins like?
Yes,
I love these.
I get it, right? And so I'm going to try to answer your question, right, based on like some contingencies, because again, I've fit like higher speed, like 10 handicaps into like closer to game improvement irons rather than the alternative, right, in an effort to just keep spin down. I want to see how much I can do that with shaft and otherwise, right? Finding the correct matchup between shaft profile and engineering of the club head that's going to work for the way they deliver the club into the turf, right? Are they more picking at shallow with attack angle? Or are they a little bit steeper, right? Are they spinning it too much or not enough, right? How much can we move the needle from a shaft and head standpoint? So just big picture things that I've seen perform well for a larger majority of people. Is this more or less the question we're getting at here? Yes. Yeah.
Maybe for him.
I think models and also set makeup, right? 4 irons, I think a lot of people would benefit from using something as an alternative, right? Use a 4 hybrid or a 5 hybrid. Fred Couples' longest iron in his bag is 7 iron. He still swings driver like 108, right? He's just making the game easier for himself, right? Can he hit a 6 iron and get it to stop at 45 degrees land angle plus? Yeah. Right. But how's that going to perform out of the rough, right? Can he move it as fast through the rough as he used to? Like maybe there's just something to make the game easier for himself. So I'm seeing like less long irons. Even from like a driving iron standpoint, this depends on like what course this person is playing. Let's say I'm doing like a long game fitting or we're looking at like 3 woods and 5 woods. Okay, how are you using these clubs? Right? Are you using these off the tee or these second shot on par 5s? Is this long par 3s? All the above, 2 out of 3, whatever it might be, we just want to make sure that it's in line with what that player is trying to accomplish. Same thing from like a set makeup standpoint at the other end of the bag. Gap wedge is part of the iron set, right? Are you hitting partial shots with your gap wedge? Do you need more spin or less spin out of your gap wedge? What's your handicap? How frequently are you hitting a club that's at that distance? Maybe it makes more sense to include, approach, gap, utility wedge that's part of the iron set. You know what I mean? So maybe they have 3 actual wedges that are like your traditional wedge design. Maybe it's 2. I carry 2. I just use the gap wedge as part of the iron set. And then you bring in like loft gapping considerations. Go ahead.
Is that new?
No, I've played with you with that one.
Okay.
Those black king tours.
I didn't realize that was part of the set, I guess.
Yeah. So I've got that, and that gap wedge is at 49 degrees. And then I have my 54 degree sand wedge bent to 53, right? Because I needed that to go a little bit further, and I feel comfortable hitting off-speed shots with that, right? Those are questions that your fitter should be asking you. Do you feel comfortable hitting off-speed shots? No, you just want to hit everything relatively full. Or you make the loft gapping tighter, right? Because I have 7 degrees between my sand wedge and my lob wedge, right? But I feel perfectly fine hitting, knockdown 3/4, half, 53 degree wedges. So, I mean, these are all considerations, and this is why it's unique and specific to each individual. But that would be the general trends from like a set makeup perspective. 3-woods, same thing, right? If we are using this in the par 5s and we need it to land soft, probably doesn't make sense. There's been scenarios where people hit 5-woods further than they hit 3-woods.
Mm-hmm.
Why would that be the case? The launch and spin, right? If the ball doesn't get up in the air and it doesn't stay up in the air for long enough, the carry distance is going to be shorter, right? The total distance might be a little bit further, but I mean, if you're playing golf on courses where you can just run it up there, maybe it makes sense. Right? But a lot of times I've seen a lot more like 4-woods and 5-woods, or 5-woods that we turn down to a 4-wood, or 4-wood that we turn down to like a 3.5-wood. Or turn up. It just depends on like what we need the distance requirements to be. But generally speaking, I've seen more like 4 and 5-woods, and to a certain extent 7-woods more than I have like 3-woods. Mini driver depends. I think it's good for people that have, let's just say, some woes or hesitation when they're standing over a big driver. It can provide just a little bit more confidence, to your point. Like, I know I'm going to find a fairway with this, right? Fairways are important. For players that use like a 3-wood off the tee, but they have something that's long enough to hit out of the fairway, same for your case, whether that's 5-wood or 7-wood, whatever it might be. It just depends on each person. So mini drivers, I still like, they're relevant. I just got the Cobra one. I've been tinkering with it. Whether or not it has a place in my bag, I'm still trying to figure that out. But I mean, looping back to what we talked about earlier, it's nice to have options, right? Depending on where I'm playing, or like what the course is requiring me. Like, I can go play my 3-wood or my 5-wood or my driving iron or the mini driver, right? And I can interchange those as necessary. I can take 2 out of 4 of those. Maybe I take 3 out of 4 and I dump my 4 iron for that course, so I know I'm not going to have that distance. So, I mean, just like it's good to have the flexibility there. Even to that end, like, there's an article that came out, like, Scotty, about how he kind of manufactured his long game setup to achieve the appropriate distance. And that's similar to like kind of what I've done at that end of the bag for the better part of the last year and a half, where I've got a high flight 3-wood, right, which is 16.5. So functionally it's closer to like a 4-wood. I have 4.5 grams of lead tape on the back, right? Just move CG back a little bit, try to get the launch up just a hair. I like it turned down because it points the face a little bit more to the right, and I don't want to hook it. And I actually have that cut down to 5-wood length. So I have a 4-wood turned down to like a 3-wood, cut it like 5-wood length. And I did the same thing for my 5-wood, right? I have that turned up to 6-wood loft, and I cut it to 7-wood length. Right,
which is an experiment you and I talked about doing for me. Before I got the 7-wood, it was, do you get a 5-wood and cut it down and make it a 6-wood? Do you get a 7-wood but add a longer shaft to it to effectively make it more of like a 6-wood? We had that exact conversation of how to get to the end result.
Does it satisfy the distance and the dispersion and the descent angle? Right, whether that's too high or too low with the descent angle.
So a lot of what I heard there, Jason, was that it's very individual. So for us,
yes, it is.
We are head cases on the green and we suck with drivers. So let's ditch the drivers and put a second putter in our bag.
Hey, so
that way
mid round we can kind of change putter.
And then I think maybe go 6 wedges because we need to be able to get the green in place.
Have you guys heard of mini golf before?
I suck at that too.
Funny story there. My wife kicks my butt in mini golf every time, and it pisses me off. because
Really?
I can see Alex
she doesn't
getting
think about it at all.
So pissed.
It doesn't piss me off if she beats me. That doesn't bother me. What pisses me off is
I don't know.
no.
You're like,
It
great job, honey, good job, and he's like boiling on the inside.
He goes to the restroom. He's like punching doors.
That's why those hand dryer vents are dented all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, no, it really doesn't piss me off that she beats me. What pisses me off is the lack of effort it takes
the
to
monkey.
beat me. No, it is she just tosses the ball down and hits it and it goes in and you're like, I'm over here reading the green. I'm like, what the hell's going on?
What's your learning lesson from that?
Stop caring.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe drink more.
Those are
or
kind of
don't take my wife mini golfing.
No, I don't think that's it.
I think that's it.
I might consider, right, just thinking a little less. You don't have to be completely absent of thought. That's where like heads up putting and even just doing like reactive putting, which I think is just good for learning how to like kind of tap into your intuitiveness. And when I say like reactive putting, like this is just kind of a fun drill that you can do. You get like 5 balls and you just kind of like drop them near the hole. Like let's say like, I don't know, 4 to 10 feet, and you start a timer and you see how many strokes and how much time does it take you to sink all the putts. And you try to sink them in as few strokes and as little time as possible. Because it's just point and shoot. You don't have time to think. Stand over and try to get the ball in the hole.
Yep. I've done that before with the team. It's, just go. Like, it's not quite like that, but it was just, here's a ball. They had, we called it the cardinal points, and they had to work as a team and just hit, go. And there was like a 3, 6, 9 foot range, and just go. And then the team that gets it all in, all right, you win. All right, you're going to go play the winner of the next one. Yeah, just get that repetition and that feeling and go.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll have to add that. Well, let's spend 5 minutes, Colin, talking through. I know you've only had your hands on the new gear for 3 weeks. What are you seeing from that new gear? What are you liking? What are you not liking? What's feedback you're getting? Well, what are your thoughts there?
So I will kind of loop this into, I guess, like part of your initial question with like, what are the general trends here? So I think some of this, like outside of just set makeup, how are we going to configure the bag? We also need to look at, what models have been like successful, right? And again, this isn't like discounting ones that I don't mention or I do mention, right? Some of this you can look at some of the My Golf Spy articles and things like that. For me, the top 3 performing drivers, like, or categories like last year, would be between like Ping, Titleist, and Cobra, right? Callaways are still good. TaylorMades are pretty good. But that GT2 from Titleist has been phenomenal, right? I fit that to like quite a few players. The Max K last year, the DS Adapt Max K with Cobra, ridiculously forgiving. That thing's phenomenal. It's hot off the face. And then Ping, just historically with their woods, has always been really, really, really good. If you look at like some of the MOI numbers that Cool Clubs collects, from an LST standpoint, Ping has the highest, right? Which would more or less, you could just qualify MOI as forgiveness. I guess a massive understatement and reduction of what MOI actually does, and then what else contributes to forgiveness. But yeah, the 440 LST has been really good. I've hit the 10K a little bit. I've probably only done maybe 3 or 4 driver fittings since I got all the new year. GT has still been really good, and those are now like $200 less than they were before all these new models launched. And eventually, Titleist is going to be coming out with new stuff later this year because they're running on the 2-year cycle. Ping runs on a 2-year cycle. Cobra, Callaway, TaylorMade, those are on a 1-year cycle. So yeah, I mean, that 440 Max K has been good in my personal testing so far. As far as other drivers go, the Callaway Triple Diamond Max, that thing is phenomenal. Like, at least for me personally, right? And this isn't like, I haven't had enough reps yet to give any like guidance or credence, like, okay, this is what's going to be good for a lot of different people. But it's really nice because it brings some of the spin down, but still provides like a pretty substantial amount of forgiveness. So it's a nice middle ground for somebody who needs to bring spin down, but doesn't hit the middle of the face all. So that one's been pretty good. As far as like hybrids and fairway woods go, haven't spent as much time testing those. I haven't had all but like maybe 2 long game fittings since I got that stuff in, and one of them was just for a shaft. So again, GT1 for hybrids has been really, really nice, especially for slightly slower swing speed players. The DS Adapt from Cobra last year was one of the highest rated hybrids that performed really well. I haven't had as much time with the Optum yet. And then just TaylorMade historically with the titanium face on anything on the long game side of the bag, like performs really good as well. So I'm curious to see like what'll be the like replacement or alternative for Callaway. I need to test more of those. The Elite Titanium Elite TI last year was a freaking rocket launcher. That thing just goes forever. It's stupid hot off the face. As far as like irons go this year, I haven't spent much time hitting a lot of the game improvement stuff. But just historically, like I've seen, good traction out of the 250, right? With Titleist, that's a nice, it fits a lot of different types of players. Obviously the whole T series lineup has been pretty good for them over the last year and a half plus. Trying to think else what we got new here. So M15 and M13, really good, right? I would probably ballpark, and I'd like to do a little more research before I start talking out of my ass here. But similar ballpark to like the Titleist T250, right? There's some game improvement built into that, but categorically similar. Probably a 790 would be a good ballpark there from a TaylorMade perspective. And again, 770, 790, really good for the right types of players. It just has to work with how you deliver it. Who else have I not mentioned on the iron side?
Cobra,
Cobra,
Strixon and Cobra.
Strixon, the ZXi5 is like, if I had to just like pick a blanket option without ever seeing a player swing, without knowing how fast they swing, knowing what their tendencies are, I had to pick something with zero information and just hope that it works, I'm probably picking the T250 or the ZXi5. That ZXi5 is really good, especially for players that need a little bit more launch and spin. It's still pretty forgiving.
Is the ZXi5 the one that, didn't they just release new ones though?
They did, but they're still
carrying... Because ZXi5 is what, 2 years ago?
Well, they still have ZXi5. They basically supplemented the ZXi lineup. So now they have basically ZForged, ZXi7, ZXi5, ZXi4, and then they have ZXi-R and ZXi-R High Launch. Right, so this would be closer in line. They're still under like the Dunlop and or Cleveland Sports umbrella. So this would be closer to like their Cleveland launcher, right? It's got a longer blade length. It's got a wider sole. They can distribute weight across that face a little bit more efficiently and have to provide more forgiveness, get the ball up in the air. Those I haven't spent as much time with. They've performed decently so far. The Cobra stuff is really, really cool. Right? I'm going to try not be like completely biased there because full disclosure, I am on staff with them, but it's a unique manufacturing process, right? I mean, you have traditional ways of like manufacturing irons where you have your forged, right? You cast, or you might have like cast with a forged face or whatever it might be. The 3D printing metal is crazy, right? If you look at like the actual devices that they're using to manufacture this, it's pretty wild. They're using a super, super hot laser to melt metallic powder together. They've got a video of it on their website that's pretty cool. But part of why that's beneficial, like for one, like structurally very, very sound, right? For two, it gives them enough flexibility from a weight distribution standpoint to be able to provide the sound and the feel or the forgiveness, but in a more compact players type of profile. Even the 3APX, it's a longer blade length. It has a wider sole, but it doesn't like immediately strike you as like that thing is a shovel, right? But it gives you the forgiveness of something that would be a shovel. Basically I don't know if you guys have like seen like the back of it. It has like that lattice structure. You know what I'm talking about? So that's something they have a patent on that provides the structural integrity without having to basically use the metallic powder in all of those areas. And because they're able to save weight, they can distribute center of gravity a little bit more efficiently. Now, the trade-off there would be that comes with a higher ticket price, because if you want to add that much weight in a compact area, you have to use a really, really dense metal, right, which would be tungsten. And this is what a lot of iron manufacturers will use in some capacity in some of their iron models, right? So there's two like pretty large pieces of tungsten that are strategically located within that iron head in an effort to improve enough mass, like because you can't swing an iron head that weighs like 100 grams, it'd be way too light. But also achieve the ball flight, the launch, the MOI properties that they were trying to accomplish. The last piece there too that I like about the Strixons, I was going to mention the flexibility of building like a combo set with the Strixons from like a loft gapping standpoint is awesome. I've done a lot of like 4 or 5 combos, 5-7 combos, 5-7 forged combos. You run a 5 and like 4 iron, and then you do 7 5 iron through 7 iron, and then go the forge and like 8 through pitch. Like it's just really nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, my bag. I run a combo set of Strixons. I'm 8-9 pitch in the forged and ZXi7s in the top half of the bag. And yeah, it's absolutely, and it was effortless for us to do that. And I do, I want Colin to hear this because I don't do this with him enough, because typically we're just competing on a golf course. I'm going to give him kudos. He said that he is Cobra staff. We've been working together for 4 years, and I have a Cobra in my bag by my decision on the driver. I've never once been fit for a Cobra with Colin. Their partnership with the Cool Clubs is amazing. They have access. I mean, you could see the shafts on the wall behind Colin. They have access to all of the shafts you could possibly need, even for high swing speed players. And then all of the clubs in the world from a head perspective. So when we fit my driver 2 years ago, I was actually fit into a ping. And that's what I played for a year and a half. The only reason I switched, and it's no knock on ping, I don't want anyone to take that away from the statement. I cracked 2 driver faces. After the second driver face, I was like, I have zero confidence in this club anymore. It probably has more to do with the high swing speed and hard range balls at a public range than it does the driver face itself. But we talked about the mental side of it, and mentally, that face just was never going to be something I was confident with anymore. So I had hit Colin's dark speed before, and I loved it. And when we fit, the dark speed was marginally worse than the ping. It was just the ping that made sense. So I kept the ping. So anyways, just want to give Colin kudos there. He is Cobra staff, but I don't have a single Cobra in my bag that he put in there. I'm the one that put the 7-wood and the driver in my bag, because they are good products.
And Ben fit you for the 7-wood too. Like that, I wasn't even Ben did. One, so
you're correct. You weren't even there. Yeah, that was Ben.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's like part of like balancing that too with Cool Clubs, right? Because as a Cool Clubs partner, we're brand agnostic in nature, right? So just because like I'm on staff with Cobra, I'm never going to default to that. I'm never going to try to like push that more. All I care about at the end of the day, right? If you think about like a CFP, right, a financial planner, right, they have fiduciary responsibility, right? Their goal is to make sure that you make money, because at the end of the day, they're going to make money if you make money, right? That is something that is like required as part of being a like registered CFP, right? This is the same thing in my profession. I just want you to play better golf. I do not give a shit what label it is. I want it to perform better than what you currently have, right? If you're making swing changes, I want it to have enough upside for you to grow into, right? Which is a nice benefit of having these levers to pull at our facility. You know, if I'm working with you as a coach and I fit you for clubs and I know what your tendencies are, because I've watched you swing the golf club, 1,000 times, I know what we're trying to achieve, right? And I can use the equipment to help do that, but not do it to such an egregious extent where like if you do improve the pattern, it's not going to work for you anymore.
Yep. No, to kind of circle back to the jabs that Alex keeps giving me, I have had the conversation with Ben about fitting and going through the process, and I've only had 2 lessons with him, and I asked him about it, and Ben told me, he's like, let's wait, because I'm going the Indian here is going through some changes, and Ben wants the Indian to be more efficient drawing the bow before spending lots of money and getting into that. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm just, according to Ben, I'm just not ready. Like, let's get a little further and then we can start piecing together. I mean, he did, like you said, a micro fit or a little fit, adjusted the lie on my clubs a little bit, and then just go from there. And then, yeah, we'll see how it goes. So I'm not opposed to it, just not there yet.
I was more, digging at the Bednardi purchase, but we won't talk about that.
Hey, that only cost me a couple $100.
Yeah, but I mean, those are good heads too. I do like those, but yeah, that's important, right? That's, again, if I'm looking at it from a golf professional standpoint, like, what do I do to help you play better golf, right? If I sell you clubs, will it make you play better golf, right? And if the answer is like anything short of like yes, like a definitive yes, then it doesn't make sense. Like I had a lesson with a lady this evening, who's playing like some stratas, right, that are probably 8 to 10 years old. She played for a couple of years, and then kids in life got in the way, so she took a hiatus for 6 or 8 years, 6 or 7, and she just started picking it up again within the last like year and a half. And I've worked 2 sessions with her now. She's starting to make some progress, piece this stuff together. And she asked me about clubs today. And she's like, I think I need like new equipment because like this stuff's like pretty old. And I'm like, yes, I agree. I'm like, this is why you'll probably perform with like almost anything better than what I give you because it's just as old as it is. Like, we'll probably find something that performs better, but it is now the right time to do that. Right. More or less what I explained earlier, told her the same thing. It's just like, look, I don't think it makes sense to go through like a full-fledged fitting rate. Right. Like, if we just continue doing these coachings and we sprinkle in a shaft and a head at the end of the session every so often, if we do that at the end of the session and you're applying what I told you in that session and the data is like significantly better and it's relatively consistent, then yeah, perhaps it's time. Right. But if it's not a stark enough contrast, then what's the upside? Right? What's the benefit there? It's not going to help you. Like, if you can, let's say somebody has $2,500 to budget towards getting better at golf. In some scenarios, you'd be better off spending that money on lessons, right? In some scenarios, better off spending it on clubs. Like, to that end too, like I had this guy come in for an assessment. This was probably 2 years ago at this point. He told me that he got fit over the phone. I'm not quite sure how that works. But I get it. Like, if he calls and he's like, I want some clubs, and they're like, okay, cool, we'll sell you some clubs, let's build you a set. Yeah, maybe you can get like a little bit of information to like at least not make it a completely like wild guess. But this dude was probably, I don't know, 6'4", 6'5". He's a bigger dude. He's probably 280. They put him in KBS Max 65 gram shafts. He comes in for his assessment and he's swinging 7-iron at like 2 average, 93 or 95 miles an hour. And KBS 65 gram shaft is probably a frequency of like, if I remember correctly, like 0.5 to 1.5. It's really soft. It's probably really good for people that swing 60 miles an hour.
People that are pushing 50 years old.
Yeah, I think I'm about there. Colin's gonna be like, here's some 40-gram graphite shafts for me.
Flip side of that, I had a bodybuilder that was 6'6", and about as like dense as you could get from a muscle standpoint. He swung 7-iron at about 7. He was young too. Right? He's younger than I am.
Zero mobility to swing the club.
Yeah, no rotation.
That's part of it. But I mean, like I even have another student right now who's a bigger guy. He's like 6'6", used to play collegiate football, like big barrel chest. When he first started coming in, he was swinging driver at like 85, and we got him up to like 107 the other day. Right. So it's not even just like the flexibility and mobility components, right? This is kinematic sequence, kinetic chain. How do I efficiently accelerate and decelerate my joints at the appropriate time in an effort to like transfer energy to the end of the arc? right? And this is where like I think people can, just from not to get too far on a tangent here from a coaching standpoint, you can pick up speed without swinging harder. You just have to swing more efficiently, right? You can't have any slack in the chain.
That's what we're doing with. I think both Jason and I are doing with Ben now is getting more speed with less effort. Like I said, I've slowed down my 8-iron by 10 miles an hour, and I'm still carrying it about the same.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't slowed down, but Ben's with some of the things that's like I'm more efficient. I feel it, and distances and striking have definitely improved, and I know I'm not swinging faster.
Yep. Sequencing, as we would call it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's and that all rolls into kind of what we want to talk through next time with when we do it, Ben and you, to get kind of the mental side of it. But how, when you're talking about chasing speed, it's not just swinging harder, right? That's a component of it sometimes, but talk more about the swing mechanics, I guess, is where we're headed. Mental and swing mechanics on how you can get more speed or more flexibility, and how that all plays a role in hitting more consistent golf shots. Well, good. Any final thoughts on gear?
Go get
anything
fit.
Cool that came out?
Yeah. Go get fit. At least get your clubs spec'd. At least like figure out if your clubs are so far like off base for you or not.
Yeah, I guess that dictates how long you can play in them while getting lessons versus having to get fit first.
Final thoughts. I'll let you guys kind of chat it up. Give me like 30 seconds here.
Okay.
And he's 30 seconds to get together his final.
Oh, he disappeared.
Thoughts.
Oh gosh,
he's just gone. He's like, I need to. No, he probably just turned off his camera.
He's gonna have a surprise for us.
I'll find
no, I mean, to his point, I mean, he's right. I mean, I was gonna ask him, but it literally, like, hey, you got $2,500, fit me. Where should I start? It depends. It's like, am I dialed in with the top end of the bag? So let's focus on the irons, or is it vice versa? So yeah, it's a lot of different pieces, and yeah, it's true. It's just like, I mean, personally, from what I've seen, I would think irons would probably be the priority because that is something that you're attacking the greens with more so, and then you're scoring with those versus just something off the tee. But kind of diving back to some of the stuff that he said earlier, I go to California with see the family every year, and those courses play way different here. It's a much softer, slower fairway, but the greens are in a much different condition. So like this last summer I was playing, it's like, El Calo hits, I know it's going to release or do its thing. California, it plugged like right in the green, and just, got to play longer now because it's not going to release. So those are adjustments. Now, I only know a little bit, and Colin can definitely take a whole nother session with this about, all the bounce angles and all that stuff with the wedges, with the different turfs. But again, that's a whole nother episode, I think, in itself.
Yep. And I think it's not even just different turfs. It's like, how do you deliver the club into the ground? So,
shallow, steep, all that. Yep.
So yeah, nothing fancy to show you. Unfortunately, I just had to use the restroom. So sorry to let you guys down.
That's what he had to use his 30 seconds for.
Yeah,
that's fast.
Yeah, it's short walk. But yeah, I guess other like just closing thoughts, like, this is hand in hand with like, if you got this budget to spend on golf, how do you make the most of it? This is like part of why we approach it the way that we do. This is why we have multiple like departments under one roof, because people need different things, right? And I talked about this when we were in person, like I think the first time, like which lever do we pull and when, right? And why? Like initial session, we look at your year, right? We look at how you move, right? We go through a movement screen. Right? We obviously collect baseline data on the swing, right? So for like that guy that was swinging KBS max 65s at 95 miles an hour, like, that was the first thing I was told him. I'm like, dude, this is so far way, way, way off base for you. You will get better at golf with something that just fits you more appropriate. And like, frankly, he wasn't a great ball striker. He's probably like a 20, 25 handicap. But it was just so far like out of the spectrum for him that he wouldn't be able to do what I was asking him to do from a mechanics standpoint and get rewarded for it without something that was at least a little bit more stable. And it took me probably like 5 or 6 coaching sessions to like get this across to him. And throughout all of these coaching sessions, we at least tested his versus something that was heavier and stiffer. And every time, which one do you think performed better? Wasn't his. Right? But I mean, he just bought the clubs. He made an investment and he wanted to try to make them work. And, you don't know what you don't know. Like only after so many times can you understand that like if it's too soft or too light for you, it's just not going to do what you need it to do.
Well, and I think that plays into it's continued education. It's a moving target. It's because I played very heavy shafts for a long time to force myself to slow down on transition. I had a very aggressive tempo, and I've recently switched shafts. I mean, I did that since we started this podcast, switch clubs and shafts because they just weren't the right clubs for me anymore. So it's an evolution of, everyone's particular golf journey. Perfect. Well, Colin, we appreciate you spending time and nerding out on gear with us. And I think we honestly barely touched the surface at times. I think there's so much. There's so much to get into. And it is so particular, so it is hard to cover everything. But we did our best there, and I appreciate your time. And hopefully next week we'll continue the conversation on kind of exactly what you were talking about, the journey, the mental side of it, when someone first comes to y'all, what approach do you take and how do you figure out what their journey is? Because a lot of times I'm sure people come to you without knowing what they want next. They say they want lessons, but maybe that's not what they need first, right? So how do you evaluate that with them? So I want to hear all about that. So any final thoughts?
Last thing I would say, like you said, barely scratched the surface. If you got people listening that want to learn more about equipment, go to the Cool Clubs website. Pretty sure it's coolclubs.com. They have a ridiculous amount of information and testing and reviews and things like that available. They have a robot that they invested like a ridiculous amount of money into that swings the club the same way every time, right? If they want to make it hit it slightly off the toe, off the heel, high or low on the face, they do all these tests at different swing speeds. There's a lot of just really, really good information if you want to like nerd out on the shaft and head and comparison side of things as far as equipment goes. So definitely would check that out.
Yeah, no, great ad there. I think that is very critical. I think we even talked about that late last year. I think we talked about that exact
early summer. Yeah, something about when My Golf Spy came out with like all their big stuff. They had a whole catalog of profiles and everything.
Yeah, we talked about something very similar. So, awesome. Well, as always, please give us listen, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple. We will have the IGP guys on if it's not next week after, as soon as Ben, gets released from home duty, dealing with baby and recovering mama and 3-year-old. Jason's on the flip side of that. He's playing Bachelor right now at home, so he's got a little bit of free time outside of coaching kids.
Just a little until I came home to a mess from the dogs, so that pissed me off.
Yeah, that happens. All right. Well, guys, I appreciate it, and we'll talk next week.
All right. See you.